Alright guys, this is Surreality here, and right now I'm just going to do a very quick tutorial on PvE, because I do think that there's a lot of new players who pick up this game, they play some PvE, and they don't really know what they're doing in it, and it makes it longer for everyone else, especially if you're solo queuing for raid. So this is just some quick facts and quick, just basic concepts that you need if you want to do PvE, especially if you're a new player and you have no idea what you're doing. I would recommend following this guide. Again, this is going to be real quick. So first, hit your profile button. I think by default it's P. I set it to U. Actually, you can't do that in training mode. Sorry, you have to hit G to bring up the menu, and then you can hit P or U. And this brings up your main karmas and your secondary karmas. And notice that if you click on the main karma icon right here, it brings up a list. And this list is very important. You will see on the left side it says Breaker, on the right side it says Slayer. When you go into a raid mission or a scout mission, you want to make sure you have one Breaker and one Slayer equipped, okay? That's just by default something you will want to do. If you are not doing it, then you're going to make it harder for everyone. If you are running two Slayers classes, so if you're running two of these, you're going to make everybody suffer. If you're running two Breakers, it can work. I will say I think double Breaker is more viable in PvE than double Slayer, but I would not recommend it still, because if you have more than one double Breaker in your party, then it's just going to be hectic. Nobody's going to be dealing damage. Like, sure, you'll be breaking the monster, you won't be dealing any damage though. So I would recommend everybody just runs a Breaker, one Slayer. And I mean, that's just the first basic. Like, once you have that down, you're already sort of on your way to beating these raids in less than 5 minutes. But next thing, what are the good Breakers and what are the good Slayers? Because there are certain Breakers that are good and there are certain Slayers that are good. And there are certain Breakers that are bad and certain Slayers that are bad. So unfortunately, if you do like Aegis Knight or Shield, and if you do like Ruler of Darkness or Scythe, these are not the best Breakers for PvE, because they don't actually deal that much break. The reason for that is because they don't have access to any sort of commands that can deal high break. For reference, we go to Scythe real quick and I can show it here. Scythe's biggest break that they have at any given time is right click. And you have to have demons available to even do this in the first place. And each one of these does around 4.5 bars of break. And this is problematic. And we can actually see it here if we have the player, or if you have the AI do Storm Slash. It definitely isn't amazing. It can break, it can do a decent amount of break, but notice that the endurance bar in PvE for the boss is way bigger than what you'd see on your average player. So in general, this isn't going to be doing that much break, and it's one of the reasons why Scythe sort of suffers. Though I will admit, I think Scythe does better than Shield, because unlike Scythe, Shield doesn't even have a single command that breaks. Your biggest break command is this. Now note, in the time that it took for me to do one of those, I probably could have done at least 3 Scythe RMVs, and I would have been doing more break, and it would have been faster on Scythe. So Shield also suffers when it comes to breaking, because again, you want to try to break with commands. Skills are there, and they can help with breaking, especially if you're running out of stamina, but in general, you want to use commands to break. And here are where we get into the 3 best breakers for PvE. One of them, obviously Hammer, is probably more support based, which is good. It has Faith, which is one of the best skills you can bring into PvE. Can resurrect everybody, doesn't really matter where you are, and instantly bring them up to 100 HP and MP. Really good for PvE. I don't recommend multiple people run Hammer. At most, I'd recommend like 2 or 3, because it does still perform overall worse than Sword or Fist when it comes to breaking, but it's definitely not bad. Like, if Scythe and Shield were like, I don't know, the worst, or like low tier when it comes to breaking, Hammer would probably be like mid tier in PvE. And again, it still provides the support, which is really good. And of course, if you're on Hammer, which you always want to do, you want to charge up RMB, and as soon as you reach stage 2 or higher, you left click and you do Hammer Flip, and that'll do a ridiculous amount of break, or not a ridiculous amount of break, it will do a decent amount of break on a raid boss. So you just keep doing that over and over again, and if you run out of stamina, I mean, you can even do this hammer flip and just go and do a skill or something like that. You'll do a decent chunk of break. And then of course, again, you get, if you're running Faith, which is the second ultimate for hammer, you get to revive pretty much everybody in the area just by hitting Q. So super useful. And then of course, we have what, in my opinion and many other opinions, the best breakers for PvE. Why? Because they don't have to rely, they have the biggest break commands in the game, and they don't really have to rely on anything else because of that. So, if you charge up R&B all the way up to stage 3, left click, time your left clicks to do the punch command. That whole sequence will probably take the raid boss all the way down to like anywhere from 25 to, or it'll do around 25 to 50% of the raid boss's armor or endurance, which is insane when you compare it to all the other breakers. Like, that command that I just did there is way more than Scythe could ever do, way more than a hammer could even do, way more than shield could ever do. And then of course you have sword, which is very similar to fist in terms of its break. Instead of doing the punch combo though, you just charge R&B, and then you keep charging it after you release it the first time to get into stage 2, and then you just do a ton of break with that little pillar. In fact, I think, here, I can even show you it. Let me see, I think this will hit. Like, look at how fast that broke the Storm Slash when we compared that to the Scythe R&B spam. Now, obviously, you do have to, you're pretty slow when you charge these R&Bs on Sword and Fist, but, you know, a lot of the bosses are pretty big, so just know when to charge it, and you'll be doing a lot of break in no time. And then, you might say, okay, where does the Slayer come in? Once you break the enemy, and I want to specify this, you will know you have broken the raid boss when their pink or purple bar turns into a lightning bolt. You'll see it there, you can see it there when the enemy is broken, that there's a lightning bolt. That means the boss is broken. And when the boss is broken, that means that their defense is down. And if their defense is down, you'll see them fall onto the floor first of all, but then you can start switching to Slayer. And you can start dishing out a ton of damage. And to be honest, I think when it comes to Slayers, I did say that there were probably good or best and worst Slayers to bring into PvE. In general, though, the rule is a lot more lenient for Slayers. I think all Slayers can perform well, although I do think that the best Slayers in PvE right now are probably Dual Souls, or Dual Sword as they have, and Fallen Light, or Cannon, as other people would say. These two probably perform the best simply because Cannon has access to a skill called Dragon's Breath, which when the enemy is, or the raid boss is knocked down, this does a lot of damage. Just like in an actual insane amount. I mean, that one did like 27k to the AI. It does a lot of damage. And then of course DS has access to Moon Slash, which is one of the reasons why it's so powerful, because this does like at least 10k. Reset there. Yeah, so like that did around 12k. Does a lot of damage, and of course it doesn't get affected by combo limit or damage accumulation since it's a raid boss and not a player. So you just end up doing a lot of damage. And of course, having the ult 2 Soul Blade on DS is super useful because it also really increases your damage. If you just spam LMB, you do a lot of damage. And of course, it doesn't actually lift the raid boss up, so you don't have to worry about that, but you just spam LMB when you have ult 2, you do a lot of damage. So again, that's pretty much covers everything. Make sure you run a breaker, make sure you run a Slayer. Don't run both. Especially if you're a new player, just choose one of these and choose one of these. If you want to use Scythe or Shield, even though I did say that they suffer a lot more when it comes to breaking, you can use them, but I would recommend choosing from the top 3 on the breaker side. In terms of Slayers, you can pretty much use all of the Slayers. I think there isn't really, there isn't as drastic of a difference between them, I think. But I do know that Dual Souls, or a Dual Sword, and Cannon do perform the best, so if you do want to try to get optimal damage, you would probably want to choose one of these. But if you want to do Orb, Bow, or Witch, all of them can also perform pretty well. So again, hope this helps, and hope to see you guys complete raids in less than 5 minutes. Thanks for watching.